Hi, all. Here we go on this week. I'm going to do a quick lecture on Cubism, which you can find on page 128 in your workbook if you want to follow along with the notes. And then in your textbook, I am on page, let's see, what page am I on? It starts on page 22. That's wrong. Page 401. Starts on page 401. All right, Cubism. The statement for Cubism is it shows objects on the mind. Once again, the statement for Cubism is it shows objects as the mind rather than I perceives them. So is what this is referencing is that when we see something, we get all this different information coming to us. And so the mind's capturing all this information, and then it comes back and says, here's what you're seeing. So, and we see things through glasses so that we understand it. And a lot of times what artists are doing is they're trying to look around our understanding of the world to show us how they see the world or how it might really be before we add our biases or our prejudice or our limited understanding of the world. And so in this case, what the artists are trying to do, and everybody, let me do this. Let me go this direction. If you look on page 402, you have George Braque is one of the artists that's pretty predominant during this time. And there's a piece here that's called The Portuguese. And if you look at that painting, you're like, what is going on here? It looks like a jumbled mess. And you think, I don't see a Portuguese. I don't even know what a Portuguese looks like. Certainly not getting any insight from this painting. And so it helps to understand what the Cubist artists were doing. So the best way that I can describe it is if they look at a scene. Let's say they're painting a picture. And so what they try to do, get my picture, ears. Okay, so they're looking at a scene. You got this picture. But the thing that they try to do is that the Cubist artist is they're trying to reflect all the different perspectives from the side, from the top, from the bottom, all these different perspectives at once. So they flatten everything out. You get rid of depth, you get rid of perspective. Shadowing isn't used to give a 3D perspective, but they reduce it to this flat plane, 2D plane. And they're showing all these different perspectives at once. But they don't stop there. The next thing the Cubist artists do is they divide the world into cubes or geometric shapes. It doesn't have to be cubes, but they cube the world. They divide the world in these different perspectives. So you're getting all these different angles, these different perspectives, divide the world up into these different segments, these geometric shapes, and then they do one more thing. And that is they take it apart and jumble it up and put it back together. And that's Cubism. And so when you look at these paintings, you can see that they don't make sense, but if you understand what they're trying to do, it makes a little more sense. And Braque's The Portuguese is a great example. Now, one observation which I always talk about is as we move along the timeline, the artists are abstracting the world. They're getting more and more comfortable abstracting the world. As if we remember that the previous artists were using going blank right here. Yes, sure. The post-impressionists. And we looked at one of the artists who were they were starting to introduce symbolism into the world. And adding and taking liberties, adding these creative perspectives as opposed to representing the world as it was. And so now, as we're getting more comfortable, artists are getting more and more comfortable abstracting the world. One of the things that shows how this evolution goes is that they're still very literal in their titles. So, for instance, we look at Braque's painting, no clue what it is, but he puts right in there, it's the Portuguese. On the next page, on 403, Pablo Picasso is another artist that we see in multiple art periods. But Pablo Picasso has this painting, and it's actually a collage, and we're not really sure what the heck is going on here, but he tells you it's violin, fruit, and wine glass, created in 1913. So it's pretty consistent. There's also a sculpture by Pablo Picasso, the guitar, in 1914. That's on page 403, the next page. You can see with George Braque on page 401 that how the world is being divided up into these geometric shapes. Paul Cézanne is an artist, another artist that we talked about, where you can see the transition from the previous art period, post-impressionism, where the brushstrokes were starting to get shorter, and Cézanne is a nice example where he was part of post-impressionism, but he's also associated with Cubism, because as his brushstrokes were getting, he took that into geometric shapes. On page 400, you can actually see one of the first paintings that started the Cubist art period, and this is by Pablo Picasso, and you can see how he's starting to divide the world up into these geometric shapes. So and also they describe Cubism as the start of the modern art period. So exploring truly non-figurative or abstract art. Characteristics, once again, of Cubism is focused on the flat, two-dimensional surface, lack of shading and linear perspective. And then this is not so much a specific characteristic, but I put on here that it's abstraction painting now as a physical object as opposed to a window on the world. So as opposed to trying to represent the world as we might see it, the painting becomes the art in itself, and it doesn't have to be anything specifically. So this week, I think, is what I'm going to do, and especially as the way this video is going. We have the art reflection, which is Guernica. It's another Pablo Picasso, where Picasso represents the tragedy and the horror of pain and suffering during war in that painting, which is from the Cubist art period. And then you have the quiz. So now you have your 3 art periods so that you can finish it. So it's quiz number 3. And I don't think I'm going to do an exercise this week. Well, the one I was going to do this week, I'll push to next week. So you guys have a great week. I enjoy viewing your work. If you have any questions, be sure and email me. Otherwise, you guys have a great week.